In this video, we are going to be talking about how to make a soft slab cylinder. So I'm starting with this block of clay here, and before you put your slab through the slab roller, you're going to want to start with your clay in block form. If you do not have clay that's in a block, say you recycled it from the pug machine, you're going to want to spend some time forming it into a flat rectangular shape before you run it through the slab roller, because you want your slab to be rectangular to begin with so that you can thin it out and it's in the shape that it needs to be. I'm going to take my wire tool and I'm just going to take off about an inch layer off the top of this block to run through my slab roller. So I'm going to take this piece and bring it over to the roller. All right, before I start using my slab roller, I'm going to pull back this canvas and make sure that my slab roller surface is dry. If someone was using the slab roller right before me, I want to make sure that I use the hair dryer to dry it off so that my slab does not stick. I'm going to place my slab piece as close to the roller as possible, pull that canvas over the top, and then begin to roll it through. And then roll it back. All right, you can see that my slab didn't quite reach all the way to the end. I could always cut this and keep rolling if I needed more slab. But from here, I'm just gonna gently lift, and then I'm gonna drape that along my arm to carry it back to my table. All right, from here, I've got my slab on my table. I'm just going to spray the slab lightly and start to smooth out using my blue rubber rib. Just to get rid of that canvas texture from my slab roller. And then I'm going to pick this up, lay it down, and do the same thing on the other side. From here, I can apply my texture, so I want to decide which side is going to be the outside of my cylinder. And I'm going to make sure that my roller is big enough to fit my template, which it looks like it is. And gently apply my texture. As evenly as possible across my slab. From here, I'm going to use my template. I'm going to place that gently on top of my texture there. And I'm going to start by tracing using my needle tool. And I'm going to make sure that my texture is applied how I want it to. So if you applied your texture at a slight angle, make sure that if you want it to be straight, that you also lay your template at the right angle. Next, I'm going to take my ruler.
Excuse me, brief interruption, everyone. Good morning. Quick announcement.
Okay, from here, I'm going to take my ruler, lay that along that line, and then I'll make that cut all the way through. The ruler is just going to give me more stability than the template would. I want to lay the template first, trace it, and then use my ruler to cut it all the way out. I'm going to make sure that I hang on to this piece here because I am going to further flatten this out. I can use this as my cylinder for the bottom. But from here, this would probably be a good point to wrap your piece up for the day. Let it sit overnight so that it becomes a little bit more workable, dries just a little bit, but make sure you put damp paper towel and plastic over your piece so it doesn't dry out. But just for the sake of this video, I'm going to continue on. If you let it sit for a day, it'll be a little bit easier to form and hold its shape as you flip it up and bring it into a cylinder. Before I bring it up, I'm going to make sure I do my mitering on my edges. So on the top and the bottom of one side, it can be either side, I'm just going to measure about 1/4 of an inch in. And then I'm going to lay my ruler across those measurements. And I'm going to cut that at a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to hold my ruler, hold my needle tool at an angle, and make a cut like so. Now for the other side, because I'm going to be folding this into a cylinder, for the other side I want to flip my cylinder over and make a cut on the other side. So 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, lay my ruler, cut at an angle. Make sure that you flip your slab over to do your other side, otherwise it will not, your cuts will not come together. From here I'm going to take my serrated rib and I'm going to drag that along my cut on the one side, open up my slip cup, add a little bit of slip along there, and then if any of that slip covered your score marks, I just like to go over it again just to bring those back to the surface. I'm going to carefully flip my slab back over, score marks on the other side, a little bit of slip, more scoring, and then flip my slab up. I'm going to very carefully bring my slab into a cylindrical shape and bring those edges that I just cut together. And you can see, because I cut them on opposite sides, they fit together just like that. I'm just going to spend some time pinching this together and making sure that it's lined up well. I'm going to flip it over to the other side, form that circle a little bit better, and then line up the bottom. Doing my best not to interrupt that texture and accidentally smooth it out. I can put my handle there, however, at that connection point so that it's kind of hides the line that I'll have to smooth. And I'm just going to keep flipping it back and forth, shaping that circle. All right, so right now I'm blending my seam on the inside. I decided that my cuts went together pretty nicely and I don't need a coil on the inside or the outside. If you feel like you have a big gap there or a big dent or anything like that you're having trouble covering up, you can add a coil if that makes sense to you. I'm using my fingers and this tool to blend on the inside, always making sure that I'm supporting from the outside as I'm putting pressure on the inside. I want to make that seam as unnoticeable as possible, especially from the inside. So there's the seam right in there. Now I'm just going to do the same thing on the outside. It's going to be a little bit trickier though because I have that texture. But I'm just going to do a little bit of blending right along that seam, just kind of pulling that clay over the seam. Now, once I have this attachment made, I want to really be careful about my drying time. I really want this to dry slowly so that seam has time to set up together. If I were to let this dry too quickly, if I were to set it under my bag and give it air without wet paper towel, or if I left it uncovered by accident, especially without a coil there, the seam would probably split apart. So I want to be as careful as possible and let this dry as slowly as possible. So there you can see, I'm gonna look at it off camera, but you can see that I blended that seam all the way up the side, and that's where I'll put my handle just so that it doesn't stick out. All right, so now I need to add a bottom to my cylinder. So I just rolled out the rest of this coil. I'm gonna place my cylinder on top of it and take my needle tool and just very slowly trace around the bottom, whatever you decide is going to be the bottom of your cup. I'm not going to cut all the way through until I take this off. I'm just going to very slowly and carefully cut that circle out. If you take your cylinder off and this doesn't look like a circle, it probably means that you need to spend some more time on the craftsmanship of your cylinder itself so that both the top and the bottom are circular. So I'm just going to cut through, pull that off, and now I have the bottom piece of my cylinder. I just flip this over. I'm going to take my serrated rib, score the bottom of my cylinder, and then score just the very edge of the circle I just cut out. Add slip. Don't be afraid to use lots of slip. You really want to make sure that these two pieces have a lot of glue so that they don't pop apart through the drying process. I'm going to place this on top, and I'm just going to gently push down along the outside. I shouldn't be able, this should be really nice and attached. I shouldn't be able to easily peel this off once it's attached. I'm going to put some pressure so that it stays together. And from there, I'm just going to go through around the bottom with my finger and blend that seam up into my cup, or up into my cylinder. Again, ideally this maybe would have had another day to set up. My slab is a little bit soft, and I can feel it kind of becoming uncircular in my hand, uncylindrical. I don't know if that's a word. As I'm handling it. So if you give your clay breaks in between from day to day as you're working on this, it'll be a little bit easier than doing it all in one day. You can also take your blue rib and go around the outside just to make sure that that's really nice and clean at the bottom. All right, from here, I'm gonna take just a little bit of clay and I'm gonna roll that out into a really thin coil. And I'm going to place that on the bottom of my cup around that seam at the bottom. And I'll just kind of drop it and then push it into place with my long wooden rib. And I'm going to push that and smooth it in to the bottom. If you feel like you don't really have a lot of gaps in the bottom around this seam here, you could also, instead of doing a coil, take a brush, dip it in some slip, and then just go ahead and make sure that there's no holes or gaps or crevices that food could get stuck into. Fill in that bottom seam with some slip and a brush. That also works and kind of helps solidify that seam there. The last thing I need to do to finish off this cylinder is to soften the rim. So when I first cut the piece with my needle tool, that rim is going to be really flat and kind of ugly. So I'm going to take my fingers and I'm just going to very gently pinch all the way around to just kind of round off the top and make it a little bit thinner and just make it more soft and aesthetically pleasing. So I just pinched all the way around, and then I'm going to take my sponge and I'm just going to smooth it so that you can't see all my pinch marks. See how I am cupping the outside of the cylinder as I'm putting that pressure on the inside. And then I'm just going to kind of go around the top so that I get the outside as well. And there you can see my rim is a lot softer, thinner. It just looks more finished. So here I have my finished soft slab cylinder. I'm gonna go around, just make sure any finishing touches that I maybe need to make, any final smoothing with my paintbrush, my sponge. I'm using this wooden tool at the bottom right now just to make sure that there's no weird bumps or lumps at the bottom. Anything you need to do, final craftsmanship touches, make sure you do. Make sure that it's nice and straight. Make sure your rim isn't flaring out too much or anything like that. And then you're ready to add a handle if that's what you are going to add to it.